There's a pandemic that's been spreading quietly for years. Something that's never arrived with a siren or an emergency alert. Something that didn't shut down cities, but slowly rewrote how people lived inside of them. For a long time, it felt subtle, almost invisible. Kind of like a low frequency hum you only notice when everything goes quiet. But around 2025, it stopped being so subtle. And by the beginning of 2026, it started feeling less like a trend and more like an infrastructure. People felt it before they understood it. A strange realization that permanence was disappearing from everyday life, replaced by access, convenience, and experience that could be started, paused, canceled, and renewed with a single tap. The phrase that keeps resurfacing in conversation, headlines, and tech culture, you've already heard it before. You will own nothing, and you will be happy. Music became something you rented instead of collected. Movies became something you streamed instead of owned. Games became a live service instead of worlds. And software became licensing instead of tools. Life reorganized itself around the subscription so gradually that most people didn't resist it. They just adapted. But beneath the surface of it all, this new economy, something far more personal was undergoing the same transformation. Something too intimate to discuss openly and too uncomfortable to confront directly. Because somewhere along the way, intimacy followed the same patch. Not loudly, not officially, and not with no big announcement. It happened quietly, through screens, algorithms, and curated personas, until emotional connection itself began to feel like something you could unlock, maintain, and upgrade through reoccurring payments. The most radical shift of the modern era wasn't the subscription economy. It was the moment that intimacy became one too. There was a moment I realized something had changed. I wasn't talking to people anymore. I was just interacting with interfaces. Every conversation felt medicated by apps, timelines, filters, and these invisible rules about attention and value, as if human connection had quietly migrated into systems designed to optimize engagement rather than meaning. People were everywhere, yet somehow unreachable. Messages were constant, yet conversations felt shallow. It wasn't dramatic enough to panic over. It was subtle enough to normalize. And that's how the shift happened. Not through collapse, but through convenience. Modern life feels crowded, and yet empty at the same time. Cities are full, yet people feel isolated. Social media is loud and proud, yet connection feels distant. Communication is instant, yet intimacy feels rare. Work consumes attention, algorithms shape perception, and screens mediate experience. Relationships that once formed through proximity, shared spaces, and gradual familiarity now compete with infinite digital alternatives that promise faster gratification and less emotional risk. Friendships become sporadic, romance becomes optimized, and community becomes optional. Loneliness doesn't feel like an exception anymore. It feels like the default setting. And default settings tend to shape behavior more than conscious choices ever could. Every era creates its own market. The industrial societies used labor, the informational society used data, and now the digital age began using attention. Platforms learned how to capture focus, extend engagement, and convert emotional investment into measurable value. Influencers became interfaces between audience and algorithms. Personalities became brands. And presence became product. People didn't just watch others online, they followed them, they related to them, and they felt connected to them. It's a new kind of relationship that emerged. Not just built on reciprocity, but on visibility. Millions of individuals began forming emotional attachment to people that would never meet, never truly know, yet felt closer to them than anyone in their physical lives. Intimacy didn't disappear, it was redesigned. At some point, emotional closeness stopped being something that developed organically and started becoming something that could be accessed through interfaces. The transformation didn't feel dramatic, it just felt efficient. A subscription unlocked a private message, a payment unlocks exclusivity, a donation unlocked recognition, and a recurring fee unlocked the illusion of closeness. Gradually, emotional proximity began aligning itself with financial contributions. The deeper the payment, the closer the perceived connection. This wasn't marketed as intimacy. It was marketed as support and community access. Beneath all that language, a structural shift had already taken place. Intimacy became tiered. There were basic levels of visibility, premium levels of attention, and elite levels of perceived closeness. Human connection began resembling software plans, not in theory, in practice. And the unsettling part wasn't that people participated in it, it was that it was feeling normal to society nowadays. Digital intimacy feels safer than any real intimacy. A screen removes unpredictability, it removes rejection, and it removes vulnerability. In that space, closeness becomes curated rather than mutual. Messages feel personal without being reciprocal. Affection feels access without requiring risk. People began calibrating their emotional lives around algorithms instead of human dynamics. And slowly, the line between connection and consumption dissolves. As subscription-based intimacy expands, the structure of relationships shifts. Men increasingly approach connection through transactions rather than interactions, and women increasingly navigate attention through monetization rather than mutuality. Neither outcome is accidental. Both are logical responses to the environment that produced them. When emotional closeness becomes measurable, scalable, and monetizable, behavior adapts accordingly. People stop asking who someone is. They start asking what kind of access they provide. Relationships stopped being experienced, and they started being managed. The cost of this transformation isn't visible in headlines. There were no riots, no collapse, and no dramatic turning points. There is only a slow recalibration of expectations. People begin expecting connection without commitment, recognition without reciprocity. Real relationships feel inefficient by comparison. They demand time, uncertainty, emotional exposure, and friction. In a world optimized for convenience, friction feels intolerable. So most people drift further into a system that offers controlled intimacy instead of chaotic humanity. And the longer this continues, the harder it becomes to remember what connection felt like before it had a price tag.
Let's see, something to fill the emptiness.